with Sam Cedar.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Cedar.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Cedar.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Tuesday, September 22nd, 2020. My name is Sam Cedar. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Professor of Government at Cornell University, Suzanne Mettler, co-author of Four Threats, the Recurring Crisis of American Democracy. Also on the program, and Romney does it. McConnell now has the votes. Welcome to your new Supreme Court. Meanwhile, the Pentagon diverted funds meant to stockpile personal protection equipment for nurses and doctors, and diverted that money to weapons. Federal judge allows Nevada to move forward with mail-in voting. And another federal judge extends the Wisconsin absentee cutoff by 6 days. DOJ blows off congressional hearings, and new polls show that the Supreme Court of the United States now has some electoral potency for the left. Manhattan DA court filing says it has grounds to investigate Trump for tax fraud. New report by The Nation magazine, feds tapped Portland protesters' phones. And the Guardian paper has evidence of a huge mail slowdown after DeJoy took over. FinCEN docs show that banks are turning a blind eye to terror and syndicate funds transfers. And all this and more on today's program. Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. I'm in the Brooklyn studio. We're going to be switching back and forth. Oddly enough, I've said this before, the Brooklyn studio is actually more of a problem in the short term. We're going to try and fix some of the stuff because it's simply not set up for this remote stuff. So I'm getting a little bit of feedback in my ears as I talk. So it's a little bit. So if I seem a little agitated, that is part of it. And then, of course, there's a lot of other reasons to be agitated. We are now witnessing, and this is, well, we're not quite there yet with the Joe Biden administration, but when we do get to a Joe Biden administration, knock on wood, the playing field shifts. And the roadblock to any type of, really, I want to say progressive, but I could also just simply say most popular reforms in the country will be Democrats in 1/2, I don't know, 1/3, 5/8 of the party. So we have people like Dianne Feinstein. And I could understand coming out and saying, or holding, or keeping one's powder dry right now about packing the court or any other court reforms, because I'm open to both packing the court and also diminishing the power of the court. I would be open to both simultaneously, frankly. And one can come up with an argument that it makes sense to keep the powder dry because nothing is going to prevent Mitch McConnell from taking this vote. If he has 50 votes, and now it appears he might have 51, but if he has 50 and Mike Pence comes in, he has the votes. And if he has the votes, he will seat a Supreme Court justice because he understands, many people do, that a 6-3 court where Brett Kavanaugh becomes the swing vote can inhibit everything from single-payer health care to a Green New Deal, or even like a green, not quite New Deal, to the capacity of executive agencies to regulate banking industry, food, suppliers, distributors, drug manufacturers. I mean, the 6-3 conservative court, abortion rights, is going to have a dramatic effect on this country. And this is Mitch McConnell's legacy. He will fulfill it. I have talked to people who know the workings of the Senate, people who have worked for a Democratic Senate majority leader. There is nothing that can be done. You can gum up the works, but not enough. There's just simply no way to stop him if he has the votes. There's just no way of doing it. You can hold up the continuing resolution. The government can shut down, and apparently the Senate can still hold confirmation hearings. Democrats can not show up, and they may not. But they may decide to show up to show the American public what they're getting in terms of Supreme Court justice, or they may say that they're not. It doesn't matter. There's no continuing resolution. There's no withholding unanimous consent that will run out the clock. There's simply no way to stop it if he's got the votes. And people were holding out hope. Murkowski, Collins have said that they wouldn't take this vote before the election. Susan Collins is in great jeopardy. Her brand is such that if she said she had to vote, if she voted for this, she'd be in bigger trouble than she is now. Mitch McConnell released her because he knew he had the other votes. But what about Cory Gardner on the ropes in Colorado? Well, Cory Gardner probably wants to work in Republican politics or be a lobbyist or something like that, so he's going to go along with it. But what about Mitt Romney? In fact, it was just a couple of days ago that one of Mitt Romney's closest political advisors chastised me for simply saying that Mitt Romney was a nice guy, because apparently I didn't realize how honorable he was. Here is a reminder of that clip. This is Stuart Stevens. My whole thing is I try not to be friends or know anybody I can possibly know in politics, so I don't really assess them.
Can I just say something? It's
Sure.
a little bit condescending to say he's a nice guy.
Well, okay.
Because
I don't.
No, because if ever we've had a lesson that character matters and the quality of the person matters, it's right now. So that Mitt Romney stood up to Trump, that he called out Trump in April. It's more than just being nice. He's actually been courageous about this, that he would be the only person in his party that would vote for impeachment. So I think that
what's the polling? Okay. Trump's approval rating in Utah. I mean, he's going to win because people don't want to vote for a Democrat, but his approval rating is around 52%. So pretty bold stuff. But here's the problem with the concept of a never Trumper, of a man whose character is judged simply because he voted for impeachment of a president who clearly deserved to be impeached. The issue with this justice sitting down is that Mitch McConnell denied Barack Obama a choice. It really didn't even matter who it was. I mean, Merrick Garland was about as, moderate a choice as you could get, as least offensive choice as you could get to Mitch McConnell. Didn't matter who it was. They denied him a choice, even though there was a vacancy starting in February of 2016. Mitch McConnell allowed there to be 8 justices for almost a year. In fact, I think it was a year. He changed the number of sitting justices to 8 based upon a principle that he completely threw out the window when, of course, it was politically expedient. Now, I'm not surprised by that. But it is despicable. I mean, if you are really resting your hat on this type of honor, then you would imagine that someone with such honor and such integrity would step to the floor and say, hey, in 2016, this Senate said we would not have hearings for a Supreme Court justice with an imminent election. And by gosh, because I have so much integrity and honorability, I will uphold that principle. What's good for the goose or the gander is good for the other goose or gander or whatever it is. And so here I give you Mitt Romney with such a bold statement.
The side of the Constitution and precedent as I've studied it, and make the decision on that basis.
Senator, you said that in your release that you would look at a nominee's qualifications. What qualifications are you looking for, and what would make you not consider someone that President Trump is putting forward?
Well, I think it's straightforward in terms of the qualifications you look for, which is someone who is an expert of the law, someone who has a record of fairness and judgment that you think is consistent with the law. I prefer choosing those folks who are, if you will, strict constructionists, meaning that they look at the law itself and the Constitution, as opposed to sort of looking into the sky and pulling out ideas that they think may be more appropriate than either the law or the Constitution. So I recognize that we may have a court which has more of a conservative bent than it's had over the last few decades. But my liberal friends have, over many decades, gotten very used to the idea of having a liberal court. And that's not written in the stars. And I know that a lot of people are saying, gosh, we don't want that change. I understand the energy associated with that perspective. But it's also appropriate for a nation which is, if you will, center-right, to have a court which reflects center-right points of view, which, again, are not changing the law from what it states, but instead following the law and following the Constitution.
Senator Romney.
Okay, so there it is, Mitt Romney saying that somehow he's completely ignoring the fact that there was a seat stolen from Barack Obama, and completely ignoring as if that happened because he's so honorable. Also, he's so honorable that he recognizes this is a center-right country, despite the fact that there has not been a Republican president who won his first term in office with a majority of votes of this country since Ronald Reagan. George Bush did not win the majority of votes in 2000. He won in 2004 as an incumbent. His father did not get a majority of votes. You got to go back to Ronald Reagan. You've got a Senate that is dominated by 45% of the country. And so this, I give you, is the man of great honor. But Republicans are going to do as Republicans do. Well, it doesn't matter if they're against Trump, because they still have an agenda to that is contrary to the vast majority of people in this country. And 100% of them do. That's the difference. There's no doubt in my mind that there's a third of the Democratic caucus in the Senate are people that we could not rely on ideologically in most circumstances or many circumstances. But with the Republicans, you get 100% guarantee. Murkowski, incidentally, won, I think, a write-in candidacy Susan Collins is just a liar. If they needed her vote, she'd be there, believe me. A couple ads that we got. Both of these are products I use. 70% of people who say they want natural products, only 2% actually buy them. Why? Because what they sell at the store is from the biggest companies and not necessarily the ones that are best for you. Where do you start? Grove Collaborative. Grove is the online marketplace that delivers healthy home, beauty, and personal care products directly to you. Grove Collaborative takes the guesswork out of going green. Every grove.co, not com, it's grove.co product is guaranteed to be good for you, your family, your home, and the planet. They got a bunch of different brands there. Mrs. Meyer's, 7th Generation, Burt's Bees. Basically, during the pandemic, I went all in. Everyone knows that I like the 7th Generation stuff because it has no scent. I use the one that has no scent. I got the containers here in the office. I use the dish soap at home. But then during the early days of the lockdown, I went all in on buying a bunch of, I guess, the Grove brand, or made their big containers. And I bought some of they have glass bottles and some with the rubber round for the kids, hand soap things. That's the way I do it now. I just refill it over and over again. And I've done it everywhere. And they got foaming soap for the kids that smells of pineapple, which I can handle. I just can't handle floral stuff. Grove has been fantastic. I get my sponges there. I get my natural cleaners, and you have it in concentrate. Can't go wrong. With Grove, you don't have to shop multiple stores. You don't have to search endlessly online. All the natural products you want in one place. You can join over 2 million households who have trusted Grove Collaborative to make their homes happier and healthier. Plus, shipping fast, free on your first order. For a limited time, when listeners of this program go to grove.co/majority, you're going to get a free cleaning gift set plus free shipping with your first order. Go to grove.co/majority. Get this exclusive offer. Grove.co/majority. As you know, I've been going through some internet problems in our remote location. I am just on the verge of getting fiber. I was having a little problem with my router. I was on the phone with the tech guy. It's a little bit country up there. So the tech guys just actually have a cell phone number. And he's telling me as I'm talking to him that he can see that my router's connected, even though we have some miscommunication. I'm not going to go into the details of that. And I started talking to him and he's like, he can see all of my activity. And I got a little freaked by that. But the fact of the matter is your ISP can see every site that you've ever visited. Even if you use incognito mode on your browser, even if you clear your history, doesn't matter who your provider is, Comcast, Verizon, doesn't matter. In the US, they can also legally sell your data to ad companies. So I freaked a little bit, but I do use ExpressVPN. It's an app that encrypts your internet connection through their secure servers, so your internet provider cannot see the sites you visit. It protects 100% of your data with best-in-class encryption. ExpressVPN is easy to use. You just tap one button, and boom, you're protected. It's available on all your devices. You can have it on your phone, your computer, you can and router. It runs seamlessly in the background. There's no lagging, no buffering. ExpressVPN is rated #1 VPN by CNET and Wired. And your whole family will be protected under one subscription. Easy to use it on your phone, easy to use it on your computer, and I guess presumably on your iPad or whatever it is. And also, that benefit about getting you can change your address. You can be in Europe. You can get all the European streaming stuff. Go to expressvpn.com/majority. Get an extra 3 months free on your 1-year package. That's expressvpn.com/majority. expressvpn.com/majority. Check it out. And lastly, one of our sponsors today, of course, Sunset Lake CBD, sunsetlakecbd.com. They are farmers up in Vermont outside of Burlington. They used to exclusively provide dairy, or for Ben and Jerry's, they would provide some. They started to grow hemp. They did it along with the help of the University of Vermont to implement regenerative agricultural practices. Their hemp is 100% pesticide free. They only use organic fertilizers. They have great business practices, minimum wage $15 an hour. Employees own a majority of the company, and their CBD is fantastic. When I sleep, one of the few reasons I do is because of my CBD tinctures. Sometimes I hit the 750 mil. Sometimes I hit the 1500 mil. If I'm really feeling a little tense, 3000 mil. They have smokables. They have gummy bears. They have infused coffee. They have a great salve that works both for your joints, your aches, and in my narrow case, my eczema. Matt can attest. Nat, what's your favorite? The smalls, right?
Yeah, the smalls are my favorite because they go right into the grinder easy. But I also like the hemp salve with arnica. It's got like shea butter, beeswax stuff in it. I'm a fan of that as well.
Wow, I had no idea. Folks, check this out, and you get 20% off with the coupon code LEFTISBEST. Left is Best, 20% off, sunsetlakecbd.com. They're fans of the show. They came to me and said, we want to do Left is Best. One word, 20% off. Check it out. You will not be disappointed. All right, we're going to take a quick break. And, do we have we do, in fact. Okay, well, I'd like to welcome back to the program Professor of Government from Cornell University, co-author of 4 Threats, The Recurring Crisis of American Democracy, Suzanne Mettler. Suzanne Mettler, welcome to the program. You're co-author, of course, Robert Lieberman, but welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much. I'm delighted to be with you.
So I guess the obvious question to begin with, and you go through some great historical examples, and some of which I'd like to talk about in terms of different times where we've had these threats. But you outline, obviously, 4 distinct threats to our democracy. And fundamentally, your argument is that we uniquely have all 4 going at the current time. But walk us through the 4 threats.
That's right. Well, there are 4 threats that scholars who study the rise and decline of democracies around the world know about, that these are things that make democracy more fragile. And so they are political polarization, which we certainly have today. It's been rising, particularly since the 1980s in the United States. Conflict over who belongs as a member of the political community. This is typically a conflict over race or gender. In the United States, we find that conflict over the status of African Americans has been a perennial and recurring threat. The third is high and rising economic inequality, which has been on the rise in the United States since the 1970s. And the fourth is executive aggrandizement. And what this refers to is the concentration of power in the top leaders. So in the United States, after traditionally having a system that was more Congress-centered, the president has gained more power right from the 1930s onward. And both parties have contributed to that. But today, for the first time ever, we have all 4 of these threats in combination. We've, there's been they've each had their own history in the United States of waxing and waning over time and combining in different ways. When even one of them was present, it could create a lot of havoc for the political system. When 3 were present, which occurred in the 1850s, it led to the Civil War. In the 1890s, it led to the disenfranchisement of millions of African American men, and then that lasted for 60 years. Today, for the first time ever, we have all four threats raging at once. So we're in a really precarious situation. American democracy has been fragile at many times in the past. And I think we've had the luxury of forgetting about that. But now it's fragile again.
All right. So I want to circle back to these four, and also sort of how they manifest itself, and also, when we've seen the various combinations throughout history. But let's turn for a moment to, I guess, just the other part of your title. Makes it easy. I just work at that level. What do we mean when we say American democracy, right? I mean, what are we really talking about? I know you write it's on a continuum, and it feels like it's on a continuum, but it's also on sometimes maybe a bit of like a hamster wheel, and sometimes it goes, it waxes and wanes as well, or maybe that is when we are on, So tell us what we mean when we say democracy, particularly in the context of America.
Yeah, I like that question. It's nicely put. So, some people might assume that the United States has been democratic from the beginning. And, with my students, we study the Constitution, and there are certainly ways in which the United States scaled up the whole notion of democracy for the world and introduced the ideas of representative government on a large scale, and freedom of religion, and so on. But of course, there were ways in which the founding was really undemocratic, anti-democratic, with slavery being incorporated into the Constitution, being the most obvious of those. And so in the United States, it's fair to say that democracy has developed over time. And I would say that it was really the 1960s that we became a fully democratic nation, where civil liberties, civil rights, and voting rights were extended to all Americans, regardless of race and gender and so on. And so that was a long story about this arc of democratization. But what we're looking at in the book is periods of time where people were worried that whatever level of democracy had developed up till that point in time was under threat of deteriorating, of backsliding, that we could go back in the other direction of having less democracy. And it's really striking to me the number of times this has happened in the United States, and when people had real anxiety that there was going to be backsliding. So that's our concern is, and we were motivated to write the book by asking, is the United States in danger today of democratic deterioration? And the idea is not that there'll be tanks in the streets and, a military coup d'etat. Scholars who study democratic deterioration find that while that kind of thing was common up through the middle of the 20th century, what's been more typical since then is backsliding, where you get some features of democracy that stay in place, like you might still have elections, and yet other aspects like the rule of law and the integrity of rights might be undermined, might become weaker.
This may be sort of a little bit off topic, but tangentially speaking, I mean, where does economic rights fall in that spectrum? Because you mentioned that, in the 60s, we had sort of reached a peak theoretically in terms of democracy within this continuum. But I mean, could we argue that does that include some form of economic rights? I mean, have we become less democratic in the context of economics, or, and by less, are we backsliding? Like, for instance, when you disempower unions, definitionally, it seems to me that you have less union concentration. That is definitionally, it seems to me, less democratic. Correct? And because the economy, obviously, and economic rights must be a factor within sort of assessing where we are on the continuum of democracy.
Yeah. Well, I agree that in a full and robust definition of democracy, it would include social rights and economic rights. In this book, we take more of a narrow, more strict definition of rights as being civil liberties, civil rights, and voting rights. But the kinds of dynamics you're mentioning are really important as a threat to democracy because, this feature of rising economic inequality. Now, when I first heard that that can be a threat to democracy, I thought that must mean, well, the 99% rises up and you have instability. But that's not, in fact, what it means. It's actually the opposite. Scholars find that around the world and through history, when there's high and rising economic inequality, it's the most affluent, the rich and powerful industries and businesses that then they decide to try to cement their power, to lock down what they have. And they don't care if they trample democracy in the process. And so I think, we've been seeing that going on already over the last couple of decades as economic elites with their political accomplices have scaled back the power of organized labor, as you've mentioned, of workers generally. And, we're in a really bad time these days for working Americans because of their rights being scaled back. And I think that's why that's come about.
Okay, and again, forgive me for sort of harping on this because the narrow definition is in some ways relative to to America in and of itself and aspirationally, right? But I mean, it seems like there is an argument to be made that a broader definition of democracy would necessarily include not just the ability to vote or the civil rights, the ability to marry who you want, and but also it would involve certain economic rights that would constitute other freedoms, right? That are also inherent to democracy. Like the same ills that can destabilize a society or at least chip away at those other those other democratic rights seems to me to be almost inherent as a democratic right in and of itself. Does that make sense?
Well, it does. And, a lot of my earlier work, and you and I've been happy to speak with you about some of my earlier books. Right. I'm really focused on those kinds of things about, how can the United States become more democratic and so that people have rights to, healthcare and fair working conditions and all of those things. But in the book, when I say we take a more narrow definition, it's because we're looking at things that we thought were settled.
Okay.
Where there's not policy debates that have still been going on around them over the past many decades. And, I would put the economic rights have been more, there's been more debate over those, but I thought voting rights were a settled matter. And now we're seeing, a lot of efforts in this election to really scale back on free and fair elections and the integrity of the election.
I mean, in some respects, that the scaling back on voting rights certainly predated Trump, right? I mean, we had the Supreme Court roll back the Voting Rights Act, despite the fact that a duly elected Senate and a duly, had reauthorized that very bill. I mean, that to me. All right. Well, so let's go and look at these four threats, and then we'll talk about two at different times where they have sort of combined. Because you write about the expanse of presidential power. It starts really in many respects with FDR and increases. The political polarization seems to wax and wane over different periods. I've interviewed people who said in the 50s, people were complaining that there was no difference, no discernible difference between the parties at all on any type of issues. Rising inequality waxes and wanes. And the question of who belongs, that seems to be a dynamic that exists in terms of like who's asserting their right to belong at different times, right? I mean, and can we start with that one? Because I mean, what's what's happening now is that there is a pushback against sort of, I think, something like Black Lives Matter, at least by, a portion of society. I would suggest broadly the white part of society, but also that is because there's a greater assertion of of Black rights in the country. But of course, we're also seeing simultaneously a diminishment of immigrant rights.
Right. Yes, exactly. So this, conflict over who belongs, the scholars who study this in countries worldwide, they say that it can be most problematic and recurring if there is a group that, when the country is founded, is really excluded. And so, of course, in the United States, the classic case of that is African Americans' status. And so, until that's really dealt with, a formative rift, as it's called, can create havoc again and again and again. But the interesting thing, and I think what you're noting, is that that's not always the case. So there are some periods of democratic instability in the country where, in fact, conflict over race was not part of it, and not because problems had been solved, rather because they were being suppressed. So this was the case in the 1790s and again in the 1930s, where both sides in the conflict, both parties, as many things as they might have disagreed about, they did not disagree about race. That was kind of taken off the table. Like, we're not going to upset the racial hierarchy. But then there are other periods when you have political polarization, and one of the things the parties is polarized about is racial inequality and the status of African Americans. And so that's very much the case now. It's kind of striking because it would have seemed to a lot of political scientists, like in the late 20th century and the early 21st century, like racism was really declining in the United States. And then the country elected our first Black president. And then, after that, here's this resurgence of racism. But in fact, what it is it's not that it's widespread across society. It's very concentrated in one party, in the Republican Party. So what's happened is that the country's become much more diverse over the last several decades, but the Republican Party has been kind of standing still, and its composition does not reflect that greater diversity, whereas the Democratic Party does. So you've got a very white party. And then when you look at people's attitudes, Republicans versus Democrats, there's measures that political scientists use called racial resentment. It's a measure of racism. It's actually like people's agreement about questions that tap into, why does racial inequality persist? And resentment is associated with answers that say, well, it's really the fault of African Americans because they lack a work ethic, they're lazy, et cetera. Whereas an answer that is really promoting of racial inequality would say, well, there are persistent laws or historic legacies of laws that have caused this racial inequality. And so Democrats and Republicans have diverged over the last few decades in how they answer those questions. So Democrats have become much more embracing of greater equality. Republicans have become more racially resentful. And so that sets up a big conflict. And so, part of what's driving polarization is that conflict. And so this, it's really organized along partisan lines these days.
So let's go back So you mentioned the 1790s where we had that polarization, but we did not have the contention over, who was the in-group. I mean, not in a way in at least amongst, I guess, folks like us, we would see in a positive way, but it was not in contention at that point. And you had things, I guess, like the Whiskey Rebellion at that time. And let's move forward. You mentioned the next sort of like big, well, you know what? Before we get there, well, I guess the 1850s is really the time where you have three of these elements converge. And of course, it leads us, and that is quite obviously who's the in-group, right? Should we have slaves or not becomes an issue. The other is political polarization, and then the third is rising inequality. Okay, let's talk about those. I mean, of course, at this point, we did not have expansive presidential power, or maybe we wouldn't have had a civil war.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, you tell me.
Well, I think, if those three threats were not present in the way they were, we might not have had a civil war. I mean, what happened was that, the South, coming out of the Constitutional Convention, the South was privileged in politics because of the 3/5 compromise, which effectively gave slaveholders and their states extra power in terms of representation in the country. So they were able to, say that they were on board with the project of democracy, going along with representation and elections. But this was democracy on white man's terms and really on Southerners' terms. But as time went on, they began to lose some of that political power because the country is becoming more and more competitive, and there was abolitionists were succeeding in getting more and more supporters who were anti-slavery. And so then the South begins to lose power, and they realize if we keep playing this game of democracy, we're going to lose slavery. And they made a choice at that point. Which was it going to be? Slavery or going by these rules of the game? And they chose slavery. So at that point,
what would have gone by the rules of the game meant in terms of like being subjected to what the North wanted to do?
Starting to lose in elections. And in the book, we tell the whole story of what was happening in Kansas. It was a territory. And so it had to decide whether it was going to be slave or free. And you had the two different sides in Kansas. They just couldn't even agree on how to run elections in order to make these decisions for the territory. And so they would have their own elections and not respect each other's, et cetera. And then that became a microcosm of what began to happen in national politics as well. So, then ultimately Lincoln is elected and the South secedes because it just, can't go along with that at all. And so it says, we're out of here. And that's what happens with polarization. It's why polarization ultimately is a threat to democracy. If one side decides we want to win on our priorities at all costs, and we don't care if we run roughshod over democracy in the process.
I mean, as you talk about that advantage that the South had in terms of the 3/5 compromise, right, where they were able to get basically extra voting power relative to who they had to distribute resources to, which is essentially, I guess, what that comes down to. Sort of feels a little bit reminiscent of what our Senate composition is right now, and that we've had two Republican presidents who have won their first elections in a row with less votes than the person who lost the election. And you start to wonder, and of course we see this dynamic, let's say in Wisconsin, and we see it in Pennsylvania on some level, although Pennsylvania, I guess, has sort of fixed itself in some respects. But this idea of the minority of people, of voters, have elected what the majority of lawmakers. And at one point, those of us who are voting for people and saying, hey, wait a second, this is supposed to work like where if you get more votes, and it's one thing to have it happen in the presidential election. We have a quirky system. I mean, it's another to have it exclusively in the Senate, where it's like, okay, 40% of the country is determining what the other 60%, what the values and the structure is for 60%. And you start to see this in states. Like at one point, the people who are saying that, wait, I'm getting 3/5 of a vote here, essentially, or 4/5 of a vote. We're going to change the system if we get in a position of power. the other side is going to feel that loss pretty, we could be talking about court packing. We could be talking about, Washington, D.C. is going to be made into a state, I think. Puerto Rico is a sort of a separate set of issues. But there may be, genuine reforms that begins to put this back in balance. And that is the problem, that the side that had been enjoying this advantage, they then are faced with that loss. I mean, that seems to be like the story of everything that's going on now, is that people who have had an advantage perceive their loss of an advantage as oppressive in some way.
Yeah, no, I think there is a lot to that. And there are a lot of political scientists who study political behavior, and they're finding that resentment is a real underlying theme in politics that we're seeing these days, and that has been driving the Republican Party in many ways. But, today's Republican Party is becoming a party that does not want to play by the rules, and that does not want to, abide by these, what I call the pillars of democracy: free and fair elections, rule of law, legitimacy of the opposition, and integrity of rights. But rather wants to win at all costs, be able to, stack the courts at all costs, be able to pursue its policy priorities at all costs, even if these pillars of democracy are violated in the process. And, we see this, as you noted earlier, these trends well predate Trump. They've been emerging for some time, for many years, and we see Trump as, more of an outcome of that process, and we think it will continue long after he's gone from public office, whenever that is. So I think, our political system, because of the kinds of things you're mentioning, we're in for a long period of careening. And so it's really important for people to get straight in their heads what it is that's our priority. And I think that we need to be thinking about these basic principles of democracy and embracing them. I think for a long time we were able to take them for granted, and we can't now. And, it's easy for people to get very focused on their policy priorities, but I think unless we really come together to protect democracy, that it's a losing battle, because ultimately, who's in charge if you don't have democracy? It's really just the most affluent people, the most organized interests, the most powerful industries, and everyone else is really out of the picture.
I want to come back to that, because those are basically the settled issues that you were talking about, those principles that create the structure where theoretically you have a better opportunity to have policies that are reflected in the desires of people, right? I mean, that's the idea, is that you create the bucket, and then, we all have different ideas of what the water is, but the people will decide what it is as long as the bucket is holding water. But I want to go back in history just a little bit, because I did not know anything about that Wilmington, North Carolina situation in the late 1890s.
Right.
And it's fascinating. I mean, this era, I say this almost every day now, but this era, this Reconstruction and sort of post-Reconstruction era is just like a massive blind spot in our national consciousness. And the more you hear about it, the more you sort of understand it as to why it is a blind spot. It's almost like this, sort of like these traumas that the country has been forgetting, but have been gnawing away at us. Tell us about that, what happened in Wilmington, because this is, it really is stunning.
It is stunning. And, everything you just said is so well put. While I was working on this chapter for many months, it was eye-opening to me and deeply, deeply disturbing. So in the late 19th century, I think a lot of Americans know that we had Reconstruction, and then it formally speaking comes to an end. But what people don't know is that in the decades after that, in the late 19th century, that African Americans in the South continued to vote in many states at pretty high levels. and to run for office at all levels. There were members of Congress, but there were a lot of people in local office in particular. And so democracy there and elsewhere in the country seemed to be pretty healthy. You had very competitive and robust political parties, and you had people participating in politics at high rates, men who had elected, who had voting rights at that point in time, of course. Then you get to the 1890s, and Southern Democrats, which was the party run by white elites, business people in the South, they were really getting tired of having to compete in every election. And it was becoming harder for them because African Americans, who tended to be Republicans, found that if they could ally forces with the new populists who were emerging, tended to be lower and middle income white people, that they could actually win elections. They would work together and create what they called a fusion ballot and run candidates from both of their parties together, and they could beat the Democrats. And this happened in North Carolina during the 1890s. So at some point, the Democrats there said, okay, we've had enough. We're going to pull out the stops. We've been trying everything. We've been stuffing ballot boxes. We've been using the threat of violence. It's not enough. And what they did is they staged a coup detat in the city of Wilmington on November 10th, 1898. This was a city where African Americans had been really moving into the middle class and were being elected, were serving on the city council and in all sorts of positions. And that all came crashing down in one day.
And excuse me, if I remember correctly too, you wrote there was one position that was appointed where you had and it was appointed, a black man was appointed, and he would be the highest paid individual in the city government of anybody. And that created a tremendous amount of resentment.
We're going back to the resentment theme again here. I think there was a lot of resentment. When I look at all these documents from that period, you can really see it writ large. And so, but on the morning of November 10th, there were thousands of people, white men in paramilitary groups that some of them were really organized by the Democratic Party. And they gathered at the city armory, and then they marched to the offices of this Black-owned newspaper, and they burned it down. And then from there, they marched into Black neighborhoods. And as the day wore on, they killed hundreds of people. And they took various city leaders and high-ranking people to the train station and made them leave town. And at the end of the day, they actually at gunpoint made those who were the city officials resign their positions, and then they installed their own handpicked folks in their place. Within a few weeks after that, they managed to now change in the state the requirements for voting and to introduce literacy tests and poll taxes. And this same thing, like we really in the book, we highlight North Carolina because there, with this coup d'etat, things came out into the open that were happening more quietly in states all over the South. All over the South, they managed to have constitutional conventions and to change the constitutions to have these poll taxes and literacy tests, disenfranchising African Americans. And once people lost their voting rights, once they lost political power, then in turn, they lost civil liberties and civil rights. You had Jim Crow was set up. And, what we tend to, I think of this as, well, that just happened in one region, that happened in the South. But it was sanctioned by national leaders in the Republican Party, by President McKinley and Theodore Roosevelt and Taft, who all, looked the other way and condoned it while all of this was happening. And it also meant that white supremacists in the South then had extra leverage, again, the way they had under the 3/5 clause, had extra leverage again in national politics and shaped our national politics for the next 60 years. So it's a really consequential story.
And in terms of the implications for now, what struck me was you had this very, very concentrated brief window of violence, and then everything in it almost like even in the context of doing this show, like when there's growth with this show, it's a spike, it drops back down, but it achieves a new normal.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at that sort of concentrated moment of violence, and literally we're talking like a week, and enough happened in that moment where they were able to sort of change, then immediately institutionalize this new normal into changes in voting laws and the way that then had a durability that lasted decades. I mean, it sort of feels like we're going along here, and it's quite possible that the next 3 months of this country's future will determine decades of where we go after that. And that, to me, that's what that Wilmington thing, I mean, in addition to like, this is a moment in history I had no idea about. And there's multiple stories over the years that I have like heard of this, particularly around race, where, you know, obviously in Tulsa, but also the Northwest Territories, where you had just assaults on Black people who had basically, you know, succeeded in the way that we talk about this, or were in the process of success in attaining, and boom, within a very short window of time, there's like a violent turn, a spike of extra lawful activity, if you will. And then it just gets institutionalized because those things are fixed. And, you know, we're looking at like a 6-3 Supreme Court. That's one of those things. Or we're looking at these are, that's what I find really disturbing about him. And I think that's why he wrote the book.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I so appreciate you laying all of that out, because that's exactly what my co-author and I were seeing as we laid out this story. And it's why watching this year of 2020 evolve, you know, since the book went off to press, and, you know, we were already seeing some eroding around the pillars of democracy, but in the months since it went off to press, things have become much worse. And we think we're at a really dangerous and troubling time.
And we should say we're talking on a day where there's a report, at least by the Nation magazine, that you had DHS people, you know, cloning people's phones in Portland to, you know, and there's some speculation that the arrests of these unmarked federal policemen were arresting people off the streets because they thought they knew what they were going to do in the future because of having their phone information. I mean, so with all that said, what do we do about that? If we went back to Wilmington, you know, in I guess October, and we had the ability to warn everybody there, what would we have said?
Golly, you know, it's a big question. I mean, it's I think it's the right way to phrase the question, because often people say to me, well, how can we rein in these 4 threats? And, you know, reining in the 4 threats, that's really hard. And that may take years or decades to rein in political polarization, for example. And really the question is more urgent. It's the way you just phrased it. It's, you know, what would you have told the folks in Wilmington a month ahead of time? I mean, the folks in Wilmington probably should have, you know, if we could have warned them with the hindsight of history, we would have told them to get out of town for the time being. But I think that Americans really need to know what is at stake right now. I think there's such, you know, the past few years, the news every day is overwhelming, and it's hard to sort it all out. And it's hard to sort out which stories are just kind of, you know, about unsavory tweets that are kind of offensive, versus which stories are about policy changes that actually matter, and then policy changes versus these fundamental changes to the pillars of democracy that can erode the system and stack the deck for some time to come. And so we're trying to shine a bright light on the latter and how important it is to to preserve those things. I mean, fortunately, at this moment, Americans can still choose. There's nothing deterministic about these threats that shape the outcome of history. And right now, we have an election coming up that if people actually take part in it at large numbers, they can have their voices heard. I mean, I do think there are a lot of efforts to be tipping the scales in the election, but I think that overwhelming participation can make those things less important.
Yeah, I mean, it occurs to me that, if we were to take that time travel thing and land in October in Wilmington, 1798, I guess 1898, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
It would be just expand your imagination a little bit of how bad this can get, in the short term. And obviously at that point, you're only 30 years out from slavery. So, the idea of like a massacre wouldn't be that. You wouldn't have to expand your imagination too much. I mean, I think it's quite easy 30 years out if there is a vibrant middle class and you have Black politicians and you have Black leaders of the community and a majority of Black people living in that area, it might be harder than I think we can imagine now, right? 30 years goes like this when you look back on history, but in the context of actually living it, feels like a lifetime ago, maybe for some of these people on some level. We don't have that. I think violence is really not so much the issue, but I look at things like, Azar taking over the FDA. And we know why they're doing that. It is because they want the ability to sort of say, like, the vaccine is here, or something to that effect. And we see this in agency after agency. We see the DOJ today say, we're not coming to your congressional hearings because last time you were there, you were very petulant and you didn't ask me the right questions. So you don't get a second bite at this apple. You suspend the sort of like concern about that because you think, well, the election will happen. But, regardless of how many people come out to vote, there's still an opportunity that that Donald Trump may end up being president. And then all of these things that we're talking about as anomalies become institutionalized for the next at least 4 years. And gosh knows what the opportunity is going to be 4 years from now. We have already seen the fecklessness of Congress at this point to deal with this. There's no reason to think that they're going to be particularly more adept at this if they have another bite at the apple. It's incredibly concerning. And I guess I appreciate your coming to talk to us about it. I don't think I'm going to sleep very much again tonight. The book is The Four Threats, The Recurring Crisis of American Democracy. Suzanne Mettler, we will put a link to that at majority.fm. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you. I've really appreciated the conversation.
All right. Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, folks. We will take a break in a moment. I think Nomi is going to join us, and she's going to reiterate to me how I pronounce her name. Apparently, I did it wrong again yesterday, and so I'm going to be taken to the woodshed again. But just a reminder, this show relies on your support. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you support the free show. You also get extra content as a member. And don't forget, you can also listen to the AM Quickie. We do that every morning. Sometimes we have a little bit of a problem with the audio like we did today. And so I got to record it quickly again as I tell Saul he gets to watch an extra 10-minute video in the morning. Phineas and Ferb or whatever it is. But check that out. Also, don't forget justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. Nomi!
Hi!
How are you?
I'm good.
So
I'm well rested.
I had like 25 people send me
emails
and to how to phonetically say your name, which I have been saying for years. First I found out I was saying it wrong, and then I've been trying to say it correctly for years. And I got people going like Nomekey, Key,
right?
Which doesn't necessarily help me because I don't know where the with the emphasis. And then I had somebody write me Nomekkee, as in Nomekkee.
No, that's not it. That's how you've been saying it.
And that's how
I think. I don't know. Every time you switch it up. We should do a mashup of this. Because this is my life. It's not just you, Sam, so don't feel guilty.
Okay.
I don't take it as... I mean, I really appreciate the audience. Like, if my whole 36 years of people mispronouncing my name has led to a mass education where the audience is involved, and I'm loving it. And I'm sure my mother's loving it too. But it is... Okay, I'll show you what I used to do when I was in bars and, like, guys were hitting on me and they were like, what's your name? And I was like, no. And they're like, what? I would go, no... me key, and the accent's on the last syllable.
Okay, the accent's on it. So no me key.
Yes, perfect.
No me key.
Well, it's like an extra syllable for Americans is like learning another language. It's
there's something about coming from Massachusetts too, to put the we just like the end of a word, forget it.
That's true. Ha.
No me key.
Pack.
No me key.
No me key.
No Mickey.
You got it.
See, I got people now eyeing me like, no Mickey. No, it's not that.
No. It's no Mickey. No Mickey.
Okay, so what is happening on the No Mickey show?
So now that I have educated everybody on how to say my name, I'm going to butcher my guest's name. Today we have a really good show. We have Pavlina Cherneva. She is a professor of economics at Bard College. She wrote a book recently about, it's called The Case for a Job Guarantee. I don't know if you've interviewed her or not yet, but really interesting book. And there's a write-up about it this week. So we're excited to have her on.
I would like to interview her.
She specializes in MMT, so she's looking at it from that perspective.
There's the Levy Institute up there, I think it is at Bard, and a lot of those MMT folks, I think, are there. I think as well.
The hub. And then we have Akela Lacey and Napoleon de Legend.
And this is at 3 p.m.
3 p.m. Eastern, right after the show. I go and I change something up, and then come back into the seat.
Will you change your outfit?
No, I just change the camera or something.
Mentality.
Change my mentality. Yes, I'm in strategy mode now, and then I go into full communist mode. No,
there you go. All right, folks, check out the Antifada as well. You can find that at patreon.com/theantifada. Matt, what's happening on TMBS tonight?
Yeah, tonight we have Marshall Steinbaum, assistant professor of economics at the University of Utah. He's going to talk to us about California's AB5 law and why we should distrust Democrats and sort of corporate Democrats who propose sectoral bargaining as a compromise position with regards to how we should categorize labor and collective bargaining. So it's kind of a wonky subject, but it should be good, folks. So that's tonight, patreon.com/TMBS and twitch.tv/literary hangover. I'll probably be doing some flight simulator later in the week.
Okay, so there you go. I'm trying to look up Sam Alito here to find out. He is 70 years old. I didn't realize he was that old. So someone just corrected me on the IM. 70 years old, Sam Alito. I guess I think of him as a 50-year-old because he was 50 when he was appointed, I think, to the court. And, well, maybe even younger than that. Wow. Eesh. No. Yeah, 15 years ago. Oh, gosh. That's why I think of him as young. Because I remember when he was picked and he was in his 50s. That makes me feel old. Also, someone else corrected me. I think I already fulfilled this correction, but if we had a proportionate amount of deaths in this country, as opposed to having 200,000 deaths, we would have closer to 88,000 deaths relative to Canada, let's say. So we would have more than half or less than half of the deaths that we've experienced at this point. Got to take a quick break. And when we come back, we will be in what we call the fun half. See you then.
It might take all the strength I got.
Was that it?
I had the wrong one opened up. Here it is.
Oh, here we go. We'll try that again. Left is best. I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
You know, I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous? You're a little bit upset? You're riled up?
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
Some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1 half. 5 eighths. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance, dance, dance.
Ooh.
Grandpa. I had my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're not paying.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
I think I might be a Nazi.
Agree.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way. Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook. Throw our hands up.
Ooh.
Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey, shut up.
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
So if you'll just forgive me, I got a pre-roll that we're going to put at the beginning of the podcast. Are you tired of the 24-hour news cycle of doom? Check out this week's sponsor, the civic engagement podcast Future Hindsight. Join them for insightful and inspiring interviews with citizen change makers from all walks of life. The most recent episode explores building political power for and by Indigenous communities with Nick Tilson. Listen to Future Hindsight wherever you get your podcasts. Okay. Nomi, how are you?
I'm well. I was on an 8-day road trip, which was supposed to be like 4 days.
Did you go back to Arizona?
I'm here for a bit, and then I'm going back, helping my parents out with some stuff. No, but I had a wedding in Colorado. It was like a very COVID-friendly... No. Let me explain to you how she did it, because she's a very special person. She was all outdoors. All the tables were like in like two people, like the couples, and then distanced away from each other. Everyone had masks and shields to put on top of the masks. And like there were hand sanitizing stations. There were like 15 people there.
Right.
But it was very well done. And, obviously, and then they Zoomed it for other folks. And it was a brunch. It was really nice. It was in Colorado.
I mean, there was that that wedding. I think it was, I can't remember where it was. I want to say in Maine. Yeah. I mean, that, I just feel so horrible for those folks.
Yeah.
Because their wedding is marred by the fact that they know, 7 people died, I think it was, as a result of being infected or a secondary infection that came from that wedding.
Right.
But if you listen to our president, it doesn't really impact anybody. Nobody really gets it, according to Donald Trump. Here is Donald Trump I guess he was doing a rally. Oh, where is this now? Here it is. He says it affects virtually no one in a Toledo, Ohio rally.
Oh, the disease, we didn't know it. Now we know it. It affects elderly people with heart problems and other problems. If they have other problems, that's what it really affects. That's it. You know, in some states, thousands of people, nobody young, below the age of 18, like nobody. They have a strong immune system. Who knows? You take your hat off to the young because they have a hell of an immune system. But it affects virtually nobody. It's an amazing thing. By the way, open your schools. Everybody open your schools.
Oh, my God.
Sleepy Joe Biden wants to impose a $4 trillion...
I mean...
They're wearing masks in the background. That's my favorite part. It doesn't exist, but we also don't want to be held liable and have this continue to affect us. So everyone's wearing MAGA masks in the background.
Well, I will say this. I do think that there is a decent reason to believe that if everyone wore masks in situations where they're in public or they're in an environment where they don't know, where they're not at home, where they don't know, basically, you know the people in your home and they're wearing, that they're wearing masks outside as well. Mm-hmm. I think we would have a lot less issue than we have now. But my understanding is at those rallies is that they are very careful to put people behind him with masks. Right. But the people in front of him are not wearing masks.
Exactly.
And we are still a couple of weeks out, I think, to find out if some of these indoor rallies have in any way contributed to the infection spreading and to people's health. I mean, we'll find out. It's stunning. 200,000 people have died from this over the course of about 6 months. And I mean, that's 400,000 annualized. And it is as if
doesn't exist. What? So Sam, there was an amazing, I don't encourage it because it's really hard, but traveling across the country, I went through 7 red states before I got to New Mexico. And it was very, very difficult. I mean, you get up and you go to what you need to eat when you're on the road. You need to go to a gas station. You're wearing your masks. And Oklahoma, Ohio, Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania to me was, which they tried to implement some sort of, stricter guidelines, but it was blocked by a conservative judge. We walked into a restaurant and we said, do you guys have outdoor seating? They said, no, we're not doing that. And then we just walked into the restaurant to see for outdoor seating. It was maybe 200 people in that restaurant, no social distancing, inside, very nice, resort kind of place, is where we could go, the only place open, and packed, no masks. Then when I got to Amarillo, Texas, went to this little Mexican place to get food to go, and the servers weren't wearing masks. Nobody in that place was wearing masks. I walked out. I was like, this is too dangerous. Just in and out. So there is an actual denial. It's like you almost have to. It's one thing for it to be theoretical and seeing it on stage with Trump and think it's just politicized, but then to see it in just your everyday life, how much people are in denial. And then to, look at the COVID rates. I mean, we started looking at every single city we'd stop in their COVID rates. And we just decided Starbucks is where we're eating for 8 days because they're forced to wear masks there.
Well, look at this clip. This is at that same Ohio Toledo round. Oh, this is in Dayton.
Yeah, he did a few yesterday.
He did a few in Ohio. This is in Dayton, Ohio. Here is John Husted. He is the Ohio Lieutenant Governor. And he's up there. And people know that, right? Conservative politics, there are no principles other than you're going to do this to own the libs, right? And Husted doesn't say those exact words, but that's what he's pushing. Like, they're going to tell you to wear your mask, and you just put this Trump mask on. I don't know why I'm doing a sort of a Southern accent, but he can't even get that sort of catty, childish line out because he says the word masks in front of a Trump rally. This is disturbing.
But if you go into a grocery store where you got to wear one, all right? Hang on, just listen up. Just listen up. All right, I get it. But if somebody tells you to take it off, you can at least say that you're trying to save the country by wearing one of President Donald Trump's masks, all right?
Wow.
All right.
In fact, what he's saying there is that if you wear a mask into a supermarket and you get peer pressure from your fellow Trump supporters saying, how could you wear a mask? You can at least say, well, it says Trump on it, and that's why I'm doing it. I mean, this is like, wow. This is honestly like the way that you deal with, you got like 3 or 4 7-year-old boys and they're out of control, and you try and trick them into, if you eat your carrots, instead of just having marshmallows for lunch, then you've got something orange. Isn't that weird? Or something like that? Like it's unbelievable.
They're trying to unbrainwash people now, like slowly unbrainwash them.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to work.
You think?
We'll see. Meanwhile,
but that actually goes to show, like in New Mexico, for instance, there's a mandate. Like on the street, people wear masks in New Mexico, whereas they don't even do that in New York. Everybody was wearing a mask. Trump supporter didn't matter. Everyone had to wear a mask.
Everybody wears it on the streets.
Not in Astoria.
No.
No, it was like Frogger. It was really.
I mean, there's, when I walk to work here, it's not that, there's very few, much less activity on the streets than it was 6 months ago, let's say, just walking to work. But I would say 90%.
Wow.
Of people, at least, wearing masks. To the extent that people aren't, they've got it on their chin. You're walking alone. There's no one around you. It doesn't freak me out to see people without their masks. But all right, let's turn to the Supreme Court. From your perspective, and I've talked to a couple of people, there does not seem to be. You can slow things down, maybe, but you cannot prevent this vote. If Mitch McConnell has the votes, even putting some type of like halt on the continuing resolution, the Senate can still function even when the government shut down. And there doesn't seem to be anything that the Democrats can do at this juncture to stop this.
I'm looking at this also through the lens of the election, and I think what's really dangerous about this moment is, as Mitt Romney, who just announced that he's, for the vote, this is an opportunity for the Republicans and Trump to unite again. So for every John Kasich that supported Biden, which who knows now if he supports Biden in light of all this, they're now bringing in, the Mitt Romney is bringing in those centrist Republicans because it's something bigger in their minds, at least, than Trump and, frankly, the pandemic. And that's why I think the Democrats need to put pressure on and say, no, this is about something much bigger, which is the pandemic. So I don't know, how they can potentially delay, as you just said. But if this turns into a rallying cry for Republicans to unite, we have some bigger issues here, which is an excited Republican base up against a, what should be an excited Democratic base, and looks like it in the polls. But, who's to say?
All right, so let's talk. Yeah. Let's get real here in terms of like the politics of this, okay? Because it's a little bit. I think, I don't know. I think like if it is the case, and I believe it is the case, that there is no way to stop this vote, And as much as I dislike Schumer, and as much as I dislike Pelosi, at least in terms of feeling like they are, their efficacy in pushback, I just don't think there is a physical way, regardless of what their will would be, even if the entire Democratic caucus, which I think it is, would be aligned with them, there is any way to prevent this vote. If that's the case, and what you're saying is true, from an electoral perspective, if you're thinking about the election, how can we win back the Senate? How can we win back the presidency? It seems to me that what the Democrats need to do is make a fight of this, but only insofar as that it gets the Democrats upset from it, but not really to make it almost like rope-a-dope for the Republicans. In other words, do not give the Republicans, they're going to get this 6th seat on the Supreme Court. That seems to be a fait accompli. What you don't want them is to get any political mileage out of it, because I don't think, to a large extent, particularly in this instance, that voters are going to go, I'm more motivated to vote now because they sat this justice on the on the Republican side than if not, right? Like, there's no call to action here. It's just like, here's payback. Whereas on the Democratic side, the call to action is, you got to vote for us. You got to vote for a Democratic Senate, because we are going to maybe pack the court, maybe reform the court, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? Like, I mean, that's the only, it seems to me, like on some level, like I don't know if it makes sense. If they're going to, if they're going to nominate Lagoa, or if they're going to nominate Amy Coney Barrett, I don't know if it makes too much of a sense to fight it as much as make it clear who he is and say that we only have one solution to this, and that is we need to take power, and then you hold us to account.
Well, this is why it was so dangerous. This is a perfect example, and any neoliberal who could be potentially watching right now, or Biden campaign person, this is the danger in appealing to centrist Republicans over your base. These centrist Republicans, I am pretty much sure you've lost them. They are going to be supporting Trump because that means they get their nominee, which is more important to them for a million reasons.
Well, what
and
if
all of their justices that come with it.
Before the election?
What was that?
What if the nominee goes through before the election?
Exactly. So think about this. And when you don't focus on your base, when you're just thinking about the data that's going to get you to win the election, and it is going to be close, and it might come down to state justices across the states, in swing states in particular, and could potentially go to the Supreme Court whether we get a new nominee or not. The only thing that stops that is an excited base and a large turnout. The only thing. So enough with appealing to the centrist Republicans to get you right over the edge. Enough with it. They're not loyal. They're flippant. Something like this could turn the arc of history because you decided you wanted to appeal a little bit more to the business class, the Mitt Romneys. Well, guess what? Mitt Romney is not loyal to the Democratic Party.
Right. And to be clear, Mitt Romney could come out to, until he takes this vote.
Yeah.
The idea that he's part of the resistance doesn't work anymore.
That's right.
Right? Because he can't come out and say, Donald Trump is the greatest threat to American democracy. Oh, excuse me for 1 second. I have to go vote for his sixth Supreme Court justice.
That's right.
Right? I mean, he is now neutralized. And, Stuart Stevens can go around and say, Donald Trump is horrible. Well, where are you on this Supreme Court pick? Their critique is now neutralized.
It's a cover, too. It's a cover. So they can say they're not for Trump because, he behaves poorly, he leans into fascists and racists and sexists and homophobes and whatever. But then at the end of the day, if that Supreme Court pick decides this election, who's to blame? They're assets to fascism.
Right. I mean, it's, and I don't know, it looks like right now, now, to be clear, I'll go through this tomorrow in terms of like what we think is going to happen to the ACA, but I think there is a decent, well, it's certainly gone I think, if Donald Trump wins. I mean, that is without a doubt. The implications of Donald Trump winning are, I think, I don't think can be overstated at this point.
Yeah.
I mean, we look at just in the run up to the election, all these things that are happening in these agencies and from across the board, right? I mean, DHS to HHS to EPA to FDA to CDC, they just took down the warnings against it being, because, I mean, just all of these things. And there's no, like, they have pushed the limits. Like they have spiked in terms of what they're willing to do that is antithetical to a properly functioning government. And that will be the baseline if Donald Trump wins.
And not to mention, anytime you show up on the streets now, it is, as a friend of mine just told me before I got on, it is an act of law and order. Anytime you express any form of resistance on the streets in New York, Portland, wherever, this is their opportunity to round people up and instill fear, which again is fascism. So as we know too well. So they're literally just trying to take all of our tools away from us, including the Republicans.
Yep. The DOJ, what's going on with the DOJ labeling New York an anarchist? What is it?
An anarchist state, anarchist. Well, it's a way for them, it's a loophole for them to basically arrest people and round them up.
I got news for you. New York, not an anarchist state. I mean,
jurisdiction.
Some anarchists here.
I didn't know the machine was dead in New York.
There are 3 cities that the DOJ, apparently in the White House, has New York City, Portland, and Seattle are on the list of anarchist cities. That Trump administration have failed to stem crime over the summer. And it means that they can be denied federal funding because it is, according to Bill Barr, a waste of funds. We are in New York, a anarchist jurisdiction. And that's where we're at now. I don't know what else that means, but this is the DOJ.
Yeah.
I mean, this is nuts. This is absolutely insane. But getting back to the Supreme Court, here is Ainsley Earhart. And this is what they're going to do. This is why Amy Coney Barrett works so well for them. Because she is an incredible right-wing judge. I mean, I don't, like back to the Stone Ages. And we'll talk more about her tomorrow. Get some time. We'll do some news. We'll do a deep dive into her. But she is also arguably a theocrat. But here is Ainsley Earhart upset. And here's the line that we're going to hear. Democrats are attacking Amy Coney Barrett because she's Christian.
McCain was on The View yesterday, and she was talking about how Kavanaugh really changed Republicans like herself, said accusations were completely baseless, and it showed that the Democrats on their side will do anything and everything to smear any conservative. There seems to be real bias against the women. The woman who has 7 children is a Catholic, and we're seeing it, and I just don't want her to be Kavanaugh'd because I don't think it's fair. If she is President Trump's choice, she has 7 children, adopted 2 from Haiti, 1 has special needs. How do the Democrats handle this? Will they attack her? They're already attacking her for her Catholic faith. My question is to them, what if it were a Democrat, a woman who's a Democrat from a different faith? Why is it okay to attack if you're a Christian, but not, they would never touch another faith? And what does this look like down the road?
It's not okay, Ainsley, and Democrats love attacking conservative women. That's something that Meghan McCain has experienced. It's something that I've have experienced. So Democrats have to be very careful. They should not run into these smearing politics the way they did with Brett Kavanaugh. And I think that Meghan McCain is spot on saying that watching the politicization of the Brett Kavanaugh hearings and just the baseless accusations, that really backfired, and voters across this country woke up, particularly women voters, as they are excited to see these women's names be put forth. This is the highest court in the land. These are extraordinarily accomplished women, wonderful mothers, and Democrats should not smear their character. They should address, again, follow the Constitution and play the advise and consent role rather than the politicization.
Oh, my God.
Well, first off, the Kavanaugh hearings were when? 2017, was it?
Yeah.
What was no? It was actually 2018.
2018,
right before the midterms.
Summer of 2018, right before the midterms. Correct me if I am wrong. The Democrats had a record-breaking win in 2018. There was more votes cast for Democrats and a higher percentage than in any off-year election in the modern era. They would have taken far more seats if it weren't for gerrymandering. But in terms of sheer votes, they did better than at any. It was a record-breaking, I think, in our lifetime. So Kavanaugh did not really impact the polls per se. I'm not convinced that,
right.
And this was what here. I'm sorry, I can't read what that said.
Never mind.
But I don't know if going after Amy Coney Barrett or if it's a Lagoa or whomever it ends up being makes sense, only because at the end of the day, there's not much they can do about it, and there's no. Lindsey Graham is already out there saying we already got the votes. Doesn't even matter who the candidate is. Doesn't even matter who the nominee is.
Well, that's like, I mean, ultimately, first off, Biden should be talking about the pandemic, fascism. And that's it. Maybe that's what steers Republicans back to his court, at least Republican voters, right? Not Republican, the big names. But we don't have time. I mean, first off, they're making this assumption that we're already attacking them, which is a very Fox News thing to do. The Democrats are saying this when, meanwhile, the Democrats are trying to figure out what's going on and trying to figure out what power and leverage they have. And it's like we haven't even moved on to that point of potential attacks. There aren't going to be these we're not going to have these endless hearings. It's not going to be people showing up on the streets. I mean, unfortunately, if they should show up, it should be at Mitch McConnell's doorstep or some of these potential swing votes, which is not going to happen. But they need to feel the pressure points need to be pushed. And right now, I think this is a great education moment for the movement. I think it's a wake-up call to the Biden campaign and neoliberals, just how dangerous they've been playing this election. But for the movement to be much more strategic.
Well, the problem, too, is that, and I guess they can do this with the Affordable Care Act. The Affordable Care Act, it's either going to be 4-4 or it could be 5-4. It could even be 6-3. And what it will do is, in this case, they'll send it back down. The circuit court is still waiting for the district court to re-examine the severability question, I think. So it's more than likely the Affordable Care Act is DOA. If Trump wins. You could also argue that it's gone eventually under a 6-3 Supreme Court, a conservative court going forward. The problem is that Biden's plan is to build on the ACA.
Yep.
So you are not set up. I mean, you're set up to say, okay, we are going to have to address a woman's right to choose. And we're going to have to do it with legislation because there are going to be 25 states in the country where the state is going to be able to outlaw because we're going to have to make a federal statute. And who knows whether that would withstand a Supreme Court challenging, this federal law. But that's what it's going to have to be. So you talk about abortion rights. I'm talking about motivating Democratic voters. you got to talk about healthcare. But the problem is you have your entire campaign is built around promoting a healthcare plan that is a supplement to something that is pre-existing, and the entire thing, it could very well go away. And so you've basically got to lay out a much broader plan, which, you know, the reality is, I don't know. You could introduce Medicare for all, and it's quite conceivable that the Supreme Court says, nope, can't do it.
Well, how would it go to the Supreme Court? I mean, first it would. I mean, that's 3-4 years down the line. That's saying it's the ACA is struck down, simultaneous Medicare for all is passed, and then Republicans decide to take it to the courts. I mean, that would happen in like 3 or 4 years, and who knows? I'm not.
I mean, it would take. I mean, but how long would it take to implement a Medicare for all?
True.
I mean, it would take a long time. I mean, I guess you know.
Well, how long did it take with ACA? 2 years?
Well, no, it rolled it out 4 years later. I mean, we passed it in 2010 and they rolled it out 2014. A lot of people thought it should have happened quicker. But Medicare for all would probably be a little bit more difficult because this isn't just like
a little bit.
This is a radically different plan. But I mean, you could maybe get there in 2 years. But nevertheless, there would be some states would sue, and some the insurance company would sue, and there's who knows the grounds on which the Supreme Court could strike it down. But I mean, people thought it was impossible to strike down the expansion of Medicare. Of Medicaid. So there's, I'm sure they have strategies, but at the very least, from a rhetorical standpoint, anyways, because I do think, look, that it's also possible the Democrats get in. If they were to strike down ambitious policies, the Democrats would be in a tougher position in terms of having to pack the courts or reform the courts in some way. And there are statutory things that you can do to reform the courts and limit their jurisdiction, I think, in some ways. But we'll get into that in the future. But the bottom line is, from a political standpoint, it is a liability that Biden has been sort of relying on the idea that even Republicans don't like Donald Trump, when the signature thing that Donald Trump has done, which is appoint justices and judges to the federal judiciary, some of your key Republicans are supporting it, particularly with the Supreme Court. I mean, we had Democrats, 18 Democrats support the latest round of federal judges who've come up. Now, I know their votes, they're just hiding, essentially. I mean, I'm sure some of them are excited about it. They're just hiding because they know their votes can't stop these judges. And they're like, well, I don't need the controversy of voting against a judge in this race. But I mean, that makes it harder to use this as an issue to motivate people.
Right. And obviously look at the results. I mean, we were just mentioning Pennsylvania. The judge struck down stricter COVID guidelines. And thanks, Manchin and Sinema.
Here is Lindsey Graham basically announcing, we don't know who the nominee is. We don't care. It's Donald Trump's pick. We're going to vote in lockstep for him. And I'm going to give you a fake reason why I've gone back on my word.
Right. It's pretty obvious they want an outcome. They'll destroy anybody's life to keep these seats open. They said they tried to destroy Brett Kavanaugh so they could fill the seat. They were dumb enough to say that. I've seen this movie before. It's not going to work. It didn't work with Kavanaugh. We've got the votes to confirm Justice Ginsburg replacement before the election. We're going to move forward in the committee. We're going to report the nomination out of the committee to the floor of the United States Senate so we can vote before the election. That's the constitutional process. After Kavanaugh, everything changed with me. They're not going to intimidate me, Mitch McConnell, or anybody else. I'm getting outraised 3-1, outspent 4-1. If you want to help me fight back, go to lindseygraham.com. $5 or $10 from half your audience would fill in the gap that I'm facing. But we're going to have a process that you'll be proud of. The nominee is going to be supported by every Republican in the Judiciary Committee, and we've got the votes to confirm the justice on the floor of the Senate before the election, and that's what's coming.
I mean, you can't even say the name of the nominee because there isn't one yet. That's unbelievable.
Doesn't matter.
No, it's not unbelievable, but it is. I mean, that's it. That's the Johnny ball game, and he doesn't care about the hypocrisy. A reminder: we have him on tape reiterating his pledge not to have a vote before inauguration in this situation, like explicit. Mm-hmm. And he said this after the Kavanaugh hearing, when he found out how despicable Democrats.
Why should we even entertain this? I mean, we all know the game. We know, just like we know neoliberals don't care about certain things with progressives and they're going to change their minds. Same thing. Why do we even entertain this? We should be focusing on the strategy to help us out, whether it's in the next 6 months or win this election. But I mean, like, cable news has been playing this over and over and over again. And now this is what people are focused on, rather than we have an election in 43 days, 44, whatever it is. And this is not, I mean, this isn't helping him win his race by playing that tape over and over. If anything, it's exciting folks who want that judge. It's just playing into his hand. I don't know.
We can't control what cable news does, and I can understand why that is it's a big story. I mean, it is a big story, and there's no news coming out of the campaigns really. I mean, that is the look. The Biden campaign has said this is going to be a referendum on Donald Trump, and everything in their campaign is structured to lay low, make no news, essentially. And that no news means, like, make it not be news that I'm not doing anything to. So I'll do just enough so that it's not a story that I'm not doing anything. But this is the strategy. Exclusively a referendum on Donald Trump. The problem is, we've been saying this all along, is that you cannot control external events. And the problem, now, if you are just doing a passive campaign, and you're just making it a referendum on Donald Trump, you have no way to pivot off of things. You have no way, if it starts going in a direction you don't like it, if the coverage starts becoming only about Donald Trump providing promise made, promise kept, because you have designed your campaign to create no attention, you don't have the ability to divert the story.
That's right.
And this is the dilemma that Biden has. Now, it may work. It may work. Or it may not. And this is the problem.
There is an opportunity. I mean, like you said, there is an opportunity to throw these attacks out now. I mean, if anything, if I were Jamie Harrison right now, I would ignore that tape.
She's
He's the candidate against
Jamie Harrison.
Jamie Harrison. He's the candidate. He's counsel to the DNC.
South Carolina, right.
South Carolina, exactly. I would be using every opportunity to remind folks about every failure, because all eyes are on Lindsey Graham right now. Forget about that tape. Who cares about the tape? It's not going to help him. But he should be using this opportunity now that Jamie Harrison is, or that Lindsey Graham is the center of it all, to remind folks how much he has hurt South Carolina. So use that opportunity.
But I think for Jamie Harrison, it's the one person who actually can benefit from that tape, because this is the ad writes itself. What else? Lindsey Graham is so in the pocket of Donald Trump, and then you play the contrasting. Sure. What else is he doing instead of working for South Carolina? That's the way.
It's a reminder about the judges, and this is South Carolina, and Jamie Harrison's trying to win over the centrist Republicans. Someone said to me, I was in Missouri, and I was talking to someone about Cori Bush's race, and everyone thought Cori was going to lose. And a really smart guy in politics who's involved locally said to me, her opponent, Lacey Clay, kept sending out these mailers saying, which seemed to be attacks. She's a nurse who hasn't paid her registration fee, but all people saw was she's a nurse. And I forgot what the other one was. There was another thing similar to that where it was like, she's a pastor without a church, which is very common in Missouri. And all people saw in a very religious district was she's a pastor. So if you're attacking him on this ad, all they're going to hear is Supreme Court Republican, that's important.
Right. Interesting.
You got to divert, like you said, you have to have a basis to divert the attention to another attack. And if Biden doesn't have that basis because he's MIA right now, it's going to be very hard to remind folks that 200,000 people have died as of today in America because of the failures of Donald Trump. You have to have that basis. And right now, he doesn't have the basis because he literally doesn't even have the base. He doesn't have a base. He should send out his surrogates on TV to talk all day long because Donald Trump is going to be so focused on the Supreme Court, he's not even going to use his energy to swipe back, which was their whole fear all along. They can throw everything at him right now if they have that base.
Right. And on some level, he needs to, I mean, it sounds like he needs to come out with a new plan, at least to get some attention, right? Yeah. And I don't know what it is, but they need to come out with something that says, you know, we're going to address, you know, even if it's implicit, we're about to lose our health care because of the court. We're going to address that now. Or, I mean, that's the most obvious one, it seems to me. But, brutal.
That's right. I think that's the perfect ad, by the way. You go into those states and where the ACA is popular. Remember all those Republican, Kentucky? I forgot what the other states were. Go in there and say, you're about to lose your health care.
Right. Donald, and I think the issue, you make it less about, and just to be clear, the idea is you make it less about the process and more about the results.
Right.
Donald Trump is going to get his pick. That means you're going to lose health care.
Or even less about Trump, less about the pick. Who's the Senate? Who's the candidate you're running against?
Well, yes, in the Senate races, yes, of course. If I'm running for Senate, I'm just talking about, you know, this guy's helping Donald Trump win and you lose. That's basically it. Is the we will start taking some calls, 646-257-3920. Let's go to some IMs here. Depop, sorry if you covered it and I missed it, but have you guys heard about Aria DiMezzo, transsexual Satanist anarchist who won the GOP primary for sheriff in New Hampshire? Her platform was F the police.
I love it.
I have not heard about that. Is she going to win for sheriff?
I just saw the news that she won. I couldn't tell if she just ran as a Republican.
That's funny.
I mean, that's kind of genius.
Makino, what's good with the debates? We live streaming of these or what? When is the first debate? It's coming up, right? In October, right?
A week from today.
Wait, is it a week from today?
Yeah.
What? This is what I'm saying. We don't even know. How ridiculous is it? It's a week from today, and there's no conversation about it.
Yeah, gonna live stream it. Figure out how we do that, but yes. Be silly. Hey guys, aren't we now at a point that if Biden won and the Senate was held by the Republicans, that they would just never confirm any judge at any point? I mean, probably, right? I think that if Biden wins, then I think we're probably going to get the Senate. Wouldn't you say that?
Yeah.
I think it's like he's going to have to win in such a decisive way that it would almost necessitate that we win the Senate as well. By we, I mean
because
the Democrats, of course.
Well, and don't forget we have Mark Kelly. You know, that's November. That's a special election.
Right.
That's very close.
Is that relevant now? Because we only have 2 Republicans. So even if for some reason they don't have the hearings before the election, which I think they're definitely going to have the hearings before the election. But even if we're in some reason where they don't, if they have gotten 52 Republicans at this point, or 51 Republicans to vote before the election, they certainly have 51 after the election.
Yeah.
And so even if one of those goes, you're at 50-50, and then Mike Pence comes in, and that's it.
That's the deciding vote, yeah.
That the Mark Kelly strategy was where people thought that Mitt Romney actually had some type of integrity.
Well, wait. wait. I don't mean to say this, but here's a pressure point. He might still, this might be his cop-out. Okay, great. Let's take it. Don't forget that's what John McCain did. Remember?
What's that?
Okay, let's take it to the floor. And then John McCain voted to save the ACA.
That's if the vote comes after the election.
Right.
You can't do it in committee.
Right. You're right. Even with Mark, yeah.
Let's see. Glass-Steagall. Voting is not performative. Whether to vote and whom to vote for should not be based on signals you want to send to your friends or on your Twitch stream for the next 4 years. I would agree. Zero Sum Sam. Did you know that Nomiki's name means jurisprudence in English? Is that true?
Sort of, not really. It's of the law. It's the basis.
I think I did know that. I think you did tell me that.
Yeah.
Your dad's a lawyer.
Yeah.
What are the odds?
So is yours. Oh my God.
That's right. You studied law back in the day. Nomi's name literally means law. She's beautiful. You are beautiful. Do I need to say more? Thank you, Zero Sum Sam. That's very, very sweet of you. Rob from Austin. I love the pilot light theme song, but my heart skipped a beat when I thought we might skip the fun half. Shatalda. I'm never going to get over this video. I don't know what it is. Quit the Thief. I used to make the stupid joke that if you see Nomiki on the show that day, then there would be no Mikey. That joke sucks even more now. Yeah, I get it.
Maybe it's a mic thing?
I don't know.
Oh, no, Michael.
Oh. RD. Oh, that's horrible. RB Dimsberg. How do I convince my friends and neighbors that RBG was a selfish failure of white feminism who preferred to be replaced by another selfish idiot that saved our freedoms? I would say
you won't.
Project.
Yeah.
You could talk about neoliberal feminism, and I wouldn't even say white feminism, neoliberal feminism, because there are a lot of working class white women who would benefit from, an intersectional feminist model. But maybe think about the thesis.
Right. Well, also, it's like, what's the value of that from a political standpoint? If there was like a series of opportunities, like I could see in 25 years from now, and Sonia Sotomayor is debating whether she should retire.
Yeah.
And there's a Democratic president, and I could see saying, hey, want to remind you what happened with RBG, then fine. But doing it now, you're just basically, it's literally like you're writing a book on how to alienate potential votes.
Exactly.
Yeah, but you could be right about it and feel superior.
Thank you.
That's also, those are not mutually exclusive things.
Well, you feel superior when you're rounded up in a fascist camp. That's what I would like to know. You can debate these all day long in the little cage that you're going to be held in because we're too busy debating these things and big ideas.
Yeah, my cell block is going to hate RBG.
I've got everybody on this entire side of the prison is just like, RBG.
She's canceled. Wait, one thing about her I will say, though, I do think it's important, and we're reading a lot about her life right now.
I think it's the case that, yes, she made a serious, obviously, a history-changing mistake. We shouldn't have one person who's in that position to do that, incidentally.
Yes.
But
I think you can get if this person really wants the smug satisfaction, you can say it's a tragedy that someone who is so concerned with her image in history has to turn over, her seat. Someone who's going to destroy her, legacy on the court.
I'm sorry, Brendan. That does not make him superior enough to the people he's talking to. Need more. He just muted himself after I said. Go ahead, Nomi.
No, it's a cautionary tale, of course, and it's the power of the Supreme Court, as you said. But you have to look at things through the context of the moment, and she was neoliberal going in, and she maintained some very conservative, in our opinion, stances. But she did radicalize throughout the last, 1994 was she? 96? Was she appointed? She did radicalize in many ways. And so, I know that's not popular among progressives, but in the context of the last 30 years, she did very, very much move further and further and further to the left, with exception to a few very important decisions.
And I also think that, like, and you also have to remember, in 1994, still, you're going to be a woman on the Supreme Court. There's a narrow opening there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just the reality. Although it is the case that, like, everybody on the Supreme Court now and since 94, whatever, they're all to the right of, like, I guess it was like the Warren Court. Like, of everybody on the court.
Sonia Sotomayor, too?
I think arguably.
Wow.
I think arguably. Bungalero. Hi, Sam. First time IM or after first time subscription. Horn me. Well, it's the shofar. But since you're new around here, I will... I know you're tired of this, but I'm going to have to say I cringe every time you say no Mickey. Congratulate yourself, because it's just wrong. You have to pronounce the E sound after the M sound. Whoever recommended that you should get slapped. No Mickey, not no monkey.
You know what this reminds me of is fact checking. They find that, like, if you fact check a claim, you have to be very careful that you don't actually just reiterate the false claim.
Honestly, I've now forgot it again.
No me key.
No me key.
Got it, yeah.
So just stop, everybody.
This is insane. I'm even like, I love it though. Thank you, everyone. That's very, very thoughtful.
Communist school. Hi, Sam. I've been watching for 3 years now, and I finally became a member today. I'll give you the shofar. In 2016, I found politics confusing, but these days I'm confident in my views and know how to articulate them well. I credit to you all in the MR crew. Thanks for everything. Thanks for listening. Appreciate it. Demos Thanes. I'm pretty terrifying when a historian offers the same warning for Americans that we would have to give the people of Pompeii before Vesuvius. Good times. Yeah, indeed. Adam Adama. I live in California and finally came around to the idea of voting for Biden to help the national popular vote. That is until he's out there knocking socialism and Dem leadership's failure on SCOTUS. I'm done with Biden and the Dems. I can see him winning in 2020 only to be a weak president that gets nothing done but austerity. Dems, wake up. Trump is the start of a new political era, not a blip on the radar. I don't trust them to protect me and my family. I don't know how else to tell them. So let me just get this clear. You had come around to the idea of voting for Biden, and then he said something you didn't like. May hurt your feelings. And then all of a sudden, Trump is the start of a new political era.
Should have a segment called Debates from Inside the Cell.
I mean, honestly, this is how it happens, right?
Yes!
I'm not saying it's going to happen, but this is how it happens. I hate to bring this up, but you look in history for examples of societies completely going off the rails, and you just say how it's just impossible to imagine. But this is what it is, right? A Supreme Court justice makes a sort of maybe selfish calculation 8 years ago. Yeah. 8 years ago. And just misses it by 2 or 3 months. And, a court in Michigan decides that these ballots aren't going to go out. And they managed to get in Louis DeJoy and to slow down the mail. And, if they had said there's a 3-day extension as opposed to a 2-day extension or something like this, like all of these things. And then you reach a point, and I don't think it's like a boil. I think it's like a cliff. You reach a point where it's not just that the heat is rising in a certain way. I do think it's a spike or a cliff. And then it's not a slippery slope. It is a cliff. And I'm convinced that's how it works. I'm not convinced that's what's going to happen, but I can say this. This is a necessary step along that way. We are fulfilling different steps. And I mean, I want people just to sort of imagine Donald Trump winning, the Supreme Court becoming then 7-2. More than likely, Breyer's not going to make it. At the very least, Thomas and maybe Alito, you're talking generations. You're going to see the inability, as if it's relevant, but of the EPA, of the FDA, of all the regulatory agencies from actually making regulations. They're all going to get rolled back from a judicial standpoint, because we're going to head into a new Lochner era. You're going to see further diminution of people's right to vote. You're going to see, it's just going to get worse and worse. And the idea of any policies coming out of there, I don't know, like you contemplate, I don't know, these oligarchies in Latin America. Where is the road? So what do we do, says Dama. What do we do? I voted for Dems every time, and here we are. I'm yelling into the wind. Well, I get that.
Different time.
I get that. But
I think what you said was...
Let me put it this way. I'm trying to lose 5 pounds. I try and cut out sweets. That doesn't work. I try and do this. I try and jog and this and that. I can tell you what is not going to work. Eating cake, eating ice cream, it is the case. I don't know. It's just sort of, it does not follow that I have been voting for Democrats every time, and I don't know how many times that is, that because we've gotten to this point because I've been voting Dems, that therefore, if I don't vote for Dems, something different, something better will happen, does not logically follow. You need to have the capacity to reason beyond what an animal, literally an animal would, right? Like there has got to be nuance here. And go ahead.
What you said, Sam, I think it's so smart. It's like death by 1,000 cuts. And then there's just you get to the bone. And then the arm just breaks off unless you bandage it quickly. And the bandage is something where we all, there's certain tools along this path that are equipped for different moments. So we, as a collective, only have a certain set of tools because we don't have all the money, we don't have all the power. And those tools only work when we work together. And so the primary is, yes, it's controlled by the Democrats, but there are a couple of tools in that primary in which we could have won if we worked as a collective, if we were focused on the right issues, if we had the right strategy, whatever it is. And unfortunately, we didn't win. And yes, we have voted Democrat, my entire lifetime. But every single time in the primary, we've gotten closer, especially the last, 2 cycles, to taking over the party, which dictates this general election, as we know really, really well. But that's a set of tools you use at that time, and there's a different set of tools you do at this time. It's just it's bonkers to me. I mean, it really is bonkers, as you said. It's a very simplistic, selfish approach to say at this moment you're going to sit on the sidelines when it's not coming. We're off the cliff. They're rounding people up off the streets. They're shooting down black people because they want to make a point now on camera. I passed by an NRA shooting range in New Mexico in which white supremacists are organizing their little militias. This is what's happening right now.
This is a funny comment he's responded now. I think it's a guy. But Dems have normalized the entire Trump presidency. I am saying they are part of the problem and not the solution. I got news for you. When you decide that I'm not going to vote for Joe Biden, you're normalizing the Trump presidency. You're the one who is saying that as much, because I got news for you. The biggest act I am doing to not normalize the Trump presidency is the idea that I am contemplating, I'm going to, I think at this point, vote for Joe Biden in New York State is maybe the most extreme indication that I am saying that Trump is abnormal that I have said in 4 years. The idea, like, I would have nowhere along this trajectory would I have contemplated that I would vote for Joe Biden or, you know, someone like Joe Biden in New York State, where I know he's going to win. But I am so desperate to make sure that Donald Trump is not president. And look, this was completely predictable 4 years ago. Completely predictable. So desperate. I mean, I used to tell the story. I know exactly where I was when Bill Clinton was elected. I was in Cobb's Comedy Club. I was shadowing Marin around because I was sort of lost in my life. And we were there as the results came in, and everybody was excited. And I was just like, ugh. I mean, I get it. Breathe a sigh of relief because the Reagan era is over. But really, Bill Clinton, you're excited about this? But that was when I began to realize, like, this is the overriding sentiment that will happen. And it happened after George Bush. And I knew it would happen after Donald Trump if we are lucky enough to be over with Donald Trump. And I understand it because we are at a point where it's like, you want to talk about normalizing Donald Trump? I don't care that Chuck Schumer is, inept. I don't care that Nancy Pelosi is inept and in some respects, I think, corrupt in a small c way, right? Her perspective is a function of the milieu in which she lives. The point is that I have a responsibility to, I feel one to society. I feel one to my kids. Like, I'm going to do everything I can without being able to change Chuck Schumer right now with a magic wand or change Nancy Pelosi with a magic wand to prevent this from going further. And if I want to promote policies that are far to the left of where Chuck Schumer is or Nancy Pelosi is or the Republicans are or anybody else is, this is a necessary step. We need to stop Donald Trump before you take the next step. I mean, this is just physics. I cannot get to the end of the race or down the road without taking these steps in between. And these steps are in between. There is no other. It doesn't look. The theory that Donald Trump would bring about some type of revolution has been shown to be a failure. Talk about Democrats not learning their lessons. Well, if you believe that Donald Trump was going to bring about some type of revolution, I got news for you. We are 200 federal judges later.
That's right.
We are trillions of dollars of wealthy tax cuts later. We are at diminished a regulatory state. We are at diminished voting rights. We are diminished in every single way later. And there's no revolution. We got Joe Biden. Yeah. So lesson, who's not learning the lesson?
Your analogy, you're running in a race and you got to get past certain points. Well, we're at the point where they're about to chop off our legs. So if we want to get to the finish it's either Biden just slows us down a little bit or our legs are chopped off and we never get to the finish line. I'm sorry. It's bonkers to me. I know it's not clickbaity. If I can just take one moment, you guys have to understand some of the messages out there that are being pushed to stay out are not always with the right motivations. Sometimes it's personal. Sometimes there's outside forces that are influencing these people. But you have to keep in mind where we are in this moment in history. Meditate on it. Because this is such a critical moment that if you live in any of these potential swing states, whether it's the Sun Belt or the Rust Belt, and you are seriously considering sending a message to the Democratic Party, the message to be sent to the Democratic Party was 4 months ago. And if you really want to send a message, get Joe Biden in office and start protesting him from day one.
Yep.
Because they actually have to respond. You want to send a message to Mark Kelly, who I really don't love, but needs to be in the office, or Schumer, or frankly, even the Democratic Party in New York State, which is a whole other conversation. You got to get in there because they're just going to steamroll you if you're just sitting on the sidelines until a week before the election.
Yeah. I mean, I think that like and here's the reality is that like the cohort that we are talking to now is really, I think, fundamentally not going to be how they vote or not vote is not I suspect, although, who knows, is not going to necessarily determine the outcome of the election. However, I would say that, like, look, it is incumbent upon you to do what you can do to get Joe Biden elected. And if you cannot donate to the campaign, work for the campaign, whatever it is, I get that. It is, I'm not a fan of Joe Biden, but you can go find a candidate that you do like, yes, who is running, and help them. I don't know, find out who it is.
Senate races. I mean, those critical Senate races, they need the support. They need those phone calls.
Absolutely. And you find a senator you like, because every vote that you drive out for that Senate candidate or that House candidate, the odds of that person voting for Joe Biden are greater than 50-50. If you can get them to vote for that progressive candidate that you want, the odds of them voting for Joe Biden is 50-50. And if you can get them out there to vote, you are going to be helping stop Donald Trump. And that is, like, I understand, do at least that. I don't know if like, and if maybe it's a progressive prosecutor, maybe it's, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Drive the vote out. Even if you think they're going to win, drive a couple extra votes out them for, And
if you live in New York and you want to help out, focus on those swing states where they don't have, strong progressive movements and strong chapters of DSA. Really think about strategically using your energy to target those who could influence, the Supreme. Well, we're past that.
And we're gonna have in the next week. We're gonna have Aaron Kleinman on, who's gonna talk about state races.
Yeah.
Not even federal races. And if you drive out votes in a couple of state Senate races, you can change legislatures.
Absolutely.
And that will fundamentally alter the trajectory of Congress and down the road. And if you're able to do that, and you could drive out 100 votes in 2 different Senate districts.
Redistricting is huge.
Yes, of course.
You want to fight gerrymandering?
There you go. At this point. So you can take this urgency, you can ignore Joe Biden, and you can put effort into this, and you can bring about positive.
But important. So going back to the point about, like, there are forces out there really focused too much on taking out Joe Biden rather than all these other conversations. That's what Trump wants. They're trying to divide us and take us off of the important issues. And what Sam is saying, instead of using your limited energy in attacking Joe Biden because you're mad at him, which we are too, I definitely am, it's using it towards these other races. It's using that energy and focusing on other things, because I think there's just too much energy. Even folks that we know aren't going to vote for Joe Biden or sit on the sidelines or whatever, the energy is out there, and it's reducing the excitement towards the state races, which are dependent on a strong Democratic ticket. I personally know some friends who are Bernie folks who are in tight races and are depending on Joe Biden's turnout to win.
Yep.
And they don't like him.
Yep. Calling from a 914 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello?
Hello?
Samuel?
Yes?
This is Samuel. I'm calling from 1996 Los Angeles.
Okay.
What's going on in 2020? Did I hear Donald Trump is the president?
Dude, listen to me. Look into Canada. That's all.
I'm on the set of Who's the Caboose right now, and I'm having a blast. But this is so Andy Dick is being a little I can't believe what I'm hearing right now.
Oh my God.
It's pretty
Andy
good.
Dick.
It's pretty good. 96 was, I think, right then. Yeah.
Well, I just want to tell you, you're doing a great job. And
Well, thank you.
I can't pronounce this no name.
Listen to me. Listen to me. I want you to email me because we've got to talk about some choices you're going to make. Maybe proposing to certain people about things like marriage. We should talk, but you've got some time. Just let me just think 3 times. Think 3 times. I appreciate the call. Good luck, buddy.
Bye-bye.
Good luck. Yeah. I wish.
Oh my God. That's too funny.
I would take that opportunity. I would take one phone call.
Beautiful kids.
Yes. No, I'm very, very happy with my kids. Very, very happy with my kids. But, calling from a 478 area code. Who's this where you calling from?
Good afternoon, Sam. This is Jeff from Georgia. I think it turned out just fine, all things considered.
Thank you. Yeah, well, thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that. Thank you.
and hey to everyone else, too. I wanted to talk a little bit about Georgia, man. I feel like the belle of the ball these days, proverbially speaking.
We got 2 races there. What can I do?
Tons of ads always getting pitched at me. I'm sorry, go ahead.
What can I do to get Joe Lieberman's son out of that race?
Oh, man. That's one thing I was going to tell you is that, because I'm a white man. I live in an R+15 district, and I am a registered and likely voter, so I get a lot of mailers and stuff from the Republicans. The thing is I get no ads about the Warnock-Lieberman race. None. 0, zip. I get tons of Ossoff stuff all the time, both for him and against him, but nothing on the Lieberman stuff. And it's getting too late for him to drop out. The time is running out. And as far as voting goes for me, I agree with everything you say, but it just doesn't mean that much to me. It's easy for me. I'm in Georgia. There's only 2 choices for me here. So I just go and I just give me the Democratic ballot, and I just vote for the Democratic ballot.
Right.
And it makes 0 difference for me usually. But this time it actually might, because that Ossoff race, if looking at what the Republicans are doing, that is the one that they're worried about. And the other thing is, I don't know if you saw this, man. It blew up yesterday. Kelly Loeffler, and that is how you say her name.
Oh, I've been saying Loeffler for a long time. Sorry.
Not that I care that much. Disrespect her all day. Say her name wrong. I don't care, but it is Loeffler. She has this ad out where I'm not kidding, she compares herself to Attila the Hun.
Let's play this ad. We have it. We pulled it.
Great, dude. You've got to play it.
Let's play it right now. Stay on the line. Here is Kelly Loeffler. Kelly Loeffler is in big trouble here because, wasn't it because Collins ran against her and really sort of positioned her as being sort of weak tea, as it were? And now she's got to promote her bona fides. Oh, also she had some insider trading issues. Yeah. But let's go.
Did you know Kelly Loeffler was ranked the most conservative senator in America?
Yep, she's more conservative than Attila the Hun.
Fight China. Got it. Attack big government.
Yeah. Eliminate the liberal scribes.
More conservative than Attila the Hun.
Uh-oh.
Kelly Loeffler, 100% Trump voting record.
I'm Kelly Loeffler. I approve this message.
Well, there's so much there in just 30 seconds, man. Like, Jesus Christ. Like, the way Attila doesn't even talk. He just grunts like a caveman. Like, it's so racist. And that 100% Trump voting record thing at the end, like, that's...
Can we not skip over the idea of, like, also kill the intelligentsia?
You're pulling back the curtain. Yeah. Do not care.
Kill the literate people?
Yeah. Their filter has, like...
Talk to 1996, Sam. Tell them to get LASIK, maybe. You could maybe duck that sort of thing would have happened. They just start lopping off the heads of anyone who wears glasses.
Right, exactly.
It's like they used to identify with civilization, but here they're literally identifying with the barbarians that attack civilization, which is somewhat honest, I guess.
All right, Matt, I want you to slow down a little bit. I don't want any anti-Hun propaganda on behalf of the Roman Empire happening on this show. We cancel you for that, son.
The Huns were guerrilla fighters.
We don't do that sort of thing. There's a thriving pastoral people of the steppes, sir. I'll have you know.
It is amazing. I mean, it is aggrievement, right? I mean, that's what it is. They are trying to do the idea is that this is the own the libs mentality. That's what it is. That is the entire conservative movement. It is own the libs. Put somebody in there that your liberal neighbor will say is like Attila the Hun.
Yeah.
If they can even, do they even know who Attila the Hun is?
Literally, all they have to do is grunt and threaten murder.
Exactly. Nuts.
The other, real quick, the last thing that I wanted to tell you is there was some discussion yesterday on the show about the Supreme Court and how it's playing out in Georgia and what these ads are doing or not doing, who they're aimed at, who they're not aimed at. I'd just like to add, I mean, everyone made some good points that day, but it's really more about focusing the minds of the Democrats, these ads that I'm seeing about the Supreme Court here, which may or may not work. Because Jamie is more or less right that the Republicans are maxed out on that stuff already, and they don't care about that hypocrisy of David Perdue.
Of course not, right.
They just don't. But playing it so starkly, it's to motivate basically white suburban Democrats, because party politics in Georgia is frankly incredibly racialized. If you're white, you vote for the Republicans. If you're black, you vote for the Democrats. That's basically how it works. And not that I do that, but that is how party politics, generally speaking, historically has happened here. And this issue, cuts through that. It doesn't have anything to do with race. It doesn't cost any money. Nobody's promising to raise anybody's taxes. It's just, this is really obvious what they're doing. They're getting ready to steal this thing again. And here's what he said. I think, I don't know that it's going to be worth the 5, 6, 7 points they're going to need in that race to pick it up, but maybe. I don't know. But I will. I don't know that anybody is ever looking to hear what old Jeff and George is doing with this ballot around it, but I'm voting straight Democrat. It's easy. It takes 5 seconds. And I'm moving on to the next thing, getting on to some other things in politics, because there's more important things to me.
Smart.
Jeff, thanks for the call. Folks should check out Dissident Peasant podcast. Do yourself a favor. Check that out. Hey, speaking of or taking a break and moving on to just sheer ignorance, Dave Rubin apparently is still alive and kicking when he's not whining about Joe Rogan not inviting him on a show or bemoaning the fact that, he has no friends now since the only people who like him are Glenn Beck. Here is Dave Rubin giving a nonpartisan take.
Breakdown. Wow, we got almost 600 in here already. That's what I like to see, people. And I'm watching everybody on every side kind of make no sense right now. So I'm just going to share a couple thoughts, and then I'll do more about this, obviously, on my direct message tomorrow. But I want to share a couple thoughts.
Pause it. I just want to say, I want people, these are difficult times. I want you to really enjoy how Dave's setting up. There's a lot of people out there talking silliness and ignorance. Let me set the record straight. Go ahead.
And I'm going to really, really try to do them in the most nonpartisan, factual, sane, I ain't trying to convince you of anything kind of way. Okay? I'm going to try. And I'm sure the commenters will let me know if I've succeeded or failed at that. But here are my basic thoughts on the thing. So first off, let me just deal with the general tenor of the conversation. The fact that there are so many people we're going to burn it down if they nominate him and if blah, blah. Okay. If that's your starting point, if your starting point is we're going to burn it all down if we don't get what we want, well, then you're really not playing it's not that you're not playing a fair game. You've decided that the American experiment of sometimes you get what you want, sometimes you don't, and that's what democracy is. You're deciding that that's no good. I don't get what I want, so I'm going to burn it all down. That's what children do, right? That's what happens when you're playing with a child a video game and they don't like it, so they reset the game in the middle. So these burn it all down people, and it's a ton of blue check lefty nutbags that are all doing the burn it all down if we don't get what we want. And it's like, do you guys think that's a negotiating ploy? Because if burn it all down, if you don't get what you want is your answer, it's like, well, okay, if we give you what you want, will you not burn it down until you do want to burn it down? So the burn it down people, okay, let's just put them aside for a second. I think we also have to say that most everybody that's involved in this conversation at a political level, if the shoe was reversed, they'd probably be saying the reverse thing, right? So if it was a Democratic president in right now and the Republicans basically would be saying, you have to wait for the election. That's what happened with Merrick Garland. And now it's just reversed. And you can find Biden saying the reverse of what he said last time. You can find every which way you can find all of that stuff. So let's remove sort of the hypocrisy and everything else. I'm going to try to strip this thing into its most basic so that maybe a little sense can appear. Here's what I think. It seems to me that politics is power, right? That's all politics is. What was Game of Thrones? I've said this many times. Game of Thrones was about attaining power, right? And at the end, everyone's pretty much dead except like 5 guys at a table, and everyone they know is dead. But politics is the endless quest for power. So the thing is, when you have power, you have to use it. But you should also be careful that you don't use it in a way that it could then be used against you. So you can find videos, and I welcome you to search for these videos. I can't do it myself because I would vomit having to watch them. But when I used to be on the Young Turks back in 2013, that's when Harry Reid, who was in charge of the Democrats, he changed the rule on the filibuster so a simple majority could could confirm a Supreme Court justice. I was a lefty, a Bernie supporter, and a Democrat at the time. And I remember on air, and you can find the videos, saying that this will come back to bite you. And by the way, that's exactly what Mitch McConnell was saying, meaning that just because you have the power to do something doesn't mean you should. And now Democrats are going to pay the price. So what should happen right now? What should happen right now, and what will happen right now? Well, Trump...
If you go back and look at those videos, you will find that Harry Reid did not get rid of the filibuster for the Supreme Court. Harry Reid got rid of the filibuster for executive office appointments, for cabinet appointments, and for federal judges because the Republicans would not seat any of them, including people who had to work in the administration, so that you could actually get a functioning government. So he's wrong, but that's okay.
I like how things come back to bite the Democrats, but he never talks about this is going to come back to fight the Republicans in any real sense. He might pay lip service.
Let's see what happens. And incidentally, it was Mitch McConnell who got rid of the filibuster for Supreme Court justices, which Harry Reid specifically would not do. And probably, I don't know, it wouldn't made a difference necessarily because Mitch McConnell had control of the Senate. But what this means is that Rubin is basically saying perfectly fine to pack the court if Joe Biden's in a position to do so. And there is absolutely no maneuver that he thinks would be inappropriate. Now, of course, we all know that's not going to be the case. And look, to some extent, he's correct. And anybody who actually thought that the Republicans were operating on some type of principle is out of their mind. Mm-hmm. Out of their mind. But continue.
Obviously is going to nominate somebody. Let's put aside who he's going to nominate. It doesn't matter. And the horrible things that are going to be said about that person, right? Let's just remember the Brett Kavanaugh thing. It doesn't matter who he selects, whether it's a man or a woman, Christian, Jew, whatever. None of it matters. They're going to be called all the worst things in the world. But the simple truth is that, and Justice Ginsburg even said this herself, that you vote a president in for 4 years. So he has to do his job for 4 years. I think that I'm trying to do this from a nonpartisan way. So if you're the president of the United States, and even if an election's coming and there's a Supreme Court seat to be filled, you have to nominate somebody. And then you have to hope that the Senate will take a look at that person and potentially confirm them or not confirm them. That's what your job is. And by the way, it's more important this year to do it than probably ever before. Because
why don't we just have to hope that the president nominates somebody? Why does he stop when it comes to the Senate? Does it have anything to do with the fact that the Senate decided not to even do their advise and consent role in 2016? He's so full of crap. And he's also getting his facts wrong. But
I'm trying to do this in a nonpartisan way.
I'm trying to do this in a way
power.
that will allow me to be the nonpartisan lefty on the Blaze. And unfortunately, I don't know what I'm talking about, but fortunately, I'm doing it for the Blaze, so nobody cares that I haven't done even the most rudimentary. I didn't even Wikipedia this before I did it. Is there anything more to this, or have we got it?
I think we've juiced it for a good 4.5 minutes.
Yeah. I feel like it's all about power, and the premise is, God forbid you show up on the streets because you don't actually have a seat at the table or have any power. This is.
Yeah.
I'm so sick of him. I can't even.
Watching a guy run a business. Basically, it's what it is with him. Let's see. Do we have time for one more call? Let me see. Here, having a little trouble with my scrolling. Here we go. All right, we've had a lot of people on for a long time, but let's just, I don't know how to pick this because we got a lot of people with the exact same amount of time on. Calling from a 919 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from? You are the final caller of the day. 919?
Oh, wait. Is this me?
Yeah, it is.
Sorry, I have a dentist appointment tomorrow, and they were calling to confirm me, and now this ruined the bit I was planning on doing.
Great job.
Yeah, sorry. Just want to point out that Nomi has explained that whole no, me, he thing.
All right, goodbye. Good luck on Thursday. Goodbye. I'm not wasting the last call on that. I'll take the next 951 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi. Hi, sorry about that. My name's Alia. I'm from California.
What's your name?
Alia.
Alia, nice to have you call in. What's on your mind?
Well, I'm curious, mostly because when Trump said at one of his recent rallies that he would consider using an executive order to keep Biden from being on the ticket for the Democrats, that essentially he's continuing to say that he is doing his utmost to try and cancel the election any illegal or legal manner. And I'm wondering, when we're facing a fascist GOP and a fascist leader, and they've always had this Christo-nationalist fascism with the GOP, it's now been brought out. Is there any chance to really save democracy, or is it that only revolution can save it?
I mean, I don't know. I would go with the lower hanging fruit right now, which is to try and stop him electorally. There'll be time for the revolution in February.
Of course. I definitely agree, go and vote. But I just feel like we keep watching this happen in other countries, and we pretend that it can't happen here. And like after listening to Robert Evans's "It Can Happen Here" and watching other things, it's a matter of are we going to ignore history and ignore language and say, well, this is technically illegal for you to do, to lie to a Supreme Court justice, to go and try and ban Muslims, but we'll let you do it. Like, that's the issue I'm seeing right now, where it's like, can't we just say, this is ridiculous, we shouldn't be doing this shit anymore?
I mean,
there has to be a stop.
I mean, I would like that. I mean, I think, like, look, we could be living through an era where we see the limitations of societies to withstand these type of things. And, it's not like we weren't close in other times in this country. I don't know. I mean, I'll tell you what, let's reconvene this conversation for February. And, it's almost like it's too urgent of a situation now to contemplate this on a theoretical level. I think it would be good to talk about it if this immediate jeopardy is in the rearview mirror. But I mean, our society seems, and I don't know if it's uniquely ill-suited, but in this time seems ill-suited to be able to deal with this. And
I agree with you.
And in the short run, what we can do is try and elect as many people that we like and who are the least distasteful to us into office. I do think in this, look, one part of me says it's hyperbole, that we'll get another bite at the apple, that there is no threshold we could pass. Or if we did, we would see armed guards everywhere, and that's the threshold. But increasingly, another part of me is like, I don't know if that's the way it works. I've not been down this road before, so I don't know what the markings are. But I do know, as someone who's 53 years old, that I look back on my life and there are decision points where things happen and you don't really realize that you've gone down a certain path until you get far enough down that it's almost too late to go back the path you came. And so I am increasingly worried that this is one of those moments. And, it's very hard as an individual, and we're all just individuals, to sort of like say, wait a second, we should be going down a different path. But I guess to a certain extent, assessing the relative ability that we have to change its trajectory, it's not the time for that right now. And, there is one task at hand right now, which I believe makes more rational sense than any other in terms of like getting to a society that I would feel better about. And that path involves stopping Donald Trump now. Appreciate the call. Hang in there.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'll give you a call back in February if I can get on the list.
All right. Appreciate it.
All right. You have a good rest of your day.
You too.
Sorry about the horrible scenario.
Well, I mean, it's
It's your fault.
Yeah, I'm sorry about it for you too. Pling, pling. All right, let's take a couple IMs and then we'll get out of here because Nomi's got to do her show. Bloomberg has paid the fines of 32,000 felons so they can vote. That's pretty good.
I saw,
I'm trying not to be, too. I'm trying to practice what I've been preaching here, which is like, I saw a thing like Bloomberg raises $20 million to pay the fines for, and I'm like, raises,
yeah.
Like, as
Where's
in,
the $100
like,
million?
I just raised this cup to my mouth because I think that's like the same measure of effort that's involved here. But with that said, 32,000 people have been enfranchised. I'm not going to give Bloomberg a cookie.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to look a gift horse in the mouth right at this moment. I'll have plenty of time to examine that gift horse in the coming weeks.
There's a really great program right now where people are sending letters. They're buying their own postage to register in key states where, Florida's particularly different, but like to register to vote and pay for fees. Like they have, I forgot what the name of the organization is. I'll tweet it out. Where people from other states, left states, can start to do other forms of voter registration and, like you said, paying off the fines.
Right. Okay. Like, so here's an example. This is a very good practical example of it. It is wrong that we have a poll tax.
Yep.
It is wrong. And I have a choice. If I'm me or Michael Bloomberg or whatever, I have a choice. I can say, I'm not going to participate in this at all. I'm not going to give any money to pay because this is illicit. This is immoral. I'm not going to help this person. I'm not going to give money to this government that is insisting on a poll tax. No way. Or I could pay that money so that that person votes so that we have ultimately the political power to change that law. That's the calculation. That's the calculation. I mean, it's a little more stark, but that is it, basically. Okay, 3 more of these. All else. I live in Michigan where there's a statewide mask mandate. Despite that, I saw that there is a gun store near me that will not allow anyone to come in with a mask on because of the nationwide rise in violent attacks by mask-wearing thugs. Ugh.
Oh my God.
Michigan, believe me. Silver Ball Stub, the MAGA mask is the toy alligator medicine spoon I had as a kid. Geek Wonk, is there a reason nobody's talking about an old-style talking filibuster commanding the floor for months in between the whole caucus? Very happy with my kids. See, Sam, romanticizing it again. My understanding is that is just not plausible to do that for months. That it can't happen. I mean, I'll double check on that specific thing, but I'm getting this from somebody who worked for a majority leader. So, all right, the last I am of the day. What is stopping Trump from packing the court? Why wouldn't he do it if he thinks the Dems are going to? The only thing that's stopping Trump from packing the court is that there is a filibuster that remains intact for legislation. Well, I don't know if it's the only thing. There's a filibuster that remains intact for legislation. You would have to pass a law, and Donald Trump would have to sign it. And plus, you wouldn't get Congress. I don't think you probably would need Congress, right?
Yeah.
For it to be a law. So you need to change the law. So he doesn't have the ability to do that. The idea that Joe Biden is going to pack the court is predicated on Democrats having the House and the Senate and the presidency.
Exactly.
All right, folks. Nomi, have a great show today.
Thank you.
Matt, Brendan, great show today for you already. Nomi, also, you could have 2 great shows in one day.
You can do anything nowadays.
Tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught.